Now, hello and welcome along to what is the final part of the Champion Sports Channel podcast for 2019. As we talked about at the start of January, it was a new idea that started out with myself, Peter O'Connell and Owen Maloney, with a phone in the office talking a bit of nonsense. And here we are tonight, still talking nonsense, but maybe in a more professional sense in our commentary, or our sponsor of the podcast, Murty Browne's Bar here in Tullycrine. Shane McMahon, the proprietor, and NC Daily as well, the leaseholder, and we'll talk more about them in just a while. We'll have some NC Daily related questions in our end of year quiz as well. We couldn't come here and not have that part of it as well. Two men that have featured in the podcast right throughout the year, Joe Garry and Fergie O'Loughlin, are with us to look back on the year and indeed maybe look ahead to what 2020 might hold. But firstly to our editor, Peter O'Connell. Peter, the podcast live from Shannon Gale's territory, as I was told during the week, that I was licking up to you a small bit. Coincidence?
Well, we are only a mile or two from where I live, so it is a bit of a shorter commute right this evening, you know. So that's normally takes a bit longer to get to work, but we're definitely delighted to be here, Derek. You know, the podcast has definitely broadened what the Clare Champion offers on the sporting front. Definitely, it has. I suppose it's become part of the fabric of what we do now, and you know, it adds to, I suppose, the commentary on Clare sport. Not everyone is going to agree with some of the opinions that we offer. Sometimes we don't even agree amongst ourselves. But, you know, I suppose we offer opinion in as informed a way as we can, as balanced a way as we can. And I suppose the one thing that kind of drives us is that, you know, we do have, I would say, a really genuine interest in Clare sport. And sometimes you have to be able to ask questions or point out issues, because if you're not doing that, you're not doing your job.
Yeah. He looks at me sternly to say, do your job as the year goes on. Just to give you an idea of how the format's going to run, we're going to have a quick look back on the year, maybe pick out some sporting highlights, and in the second half of the show then we're going to have a sporting quiz of the year. No doubt 10 out of 10 from the three experts sitting on my left hand side, and if that happens, I'll pay for the next podcast for 2020. Fergie, we'll start off with yourself. I suppose looking back on the year, we'll maybe get your highlight first of the year, or what stands out to you as the big moment.
I suppose you can't get away, I suppose, really from the county final. I suppose there was major questions, I suppose, and eyebrows rose at the start of the year when 6 Mile Bridge in the Davy Fitz and Tim Crowe scenario arose, and then to go and execute bringing the Kenilhampton home, I thought was a big occasion for them. That was locally, I suppose. There's a few things that up along in the games, I suppose, that we could look back on. I thought more interestingly, you know, the scenario that arose in Kilmaley, I thought was awful interesting. You know, when going so well and all of a sudden they hit a dip in the road and a little bit of controversy out there, and never recovered from it really. Things like that, you know, but I definitely think the county final, I think 6 Mile Bridge bringing home the Kenilhampton was one of the highlights for me, in a perspective of looking in as a neutral, and they executed their plan so well.
It's interesting you picked that as a highlight, Fergie, when you picked Cratloe to win. Were you not a little bit annoyed that you're because you were giving myself and Maloney fair stick now for picking Kilmaley, and it looked as if you were home and host to have those bragging rights? Almost. And
I suppose when we were only talking about it the other night, when we look back on the county final, and the question between three of us speaking the other night was the influence of Conor McGrath. When Conor McGrath got injured in that county final and eventually had to be taken off, the bottom fell out of Cratloe, and that influence he had all during the year really came to light in the county final when his influence was taken away from Cratloe. And I suppose for Cratloe, it's a real worrying aspect of it. But yeah, look at. I just think there's a massive talent in Cratloe. I really admire what they're doing because they're playing both codes at the highest level in the county, and I just really think that they're going so far, and then they're just falling that little bit short because of the scenario of the both code situation, which is very, very difficult to do. And you know, and the talent they had. And what I was really impressed with them, you know, for the last 2 years, is to bringing on the likes of Billy Collars, you know, that really stood up in certain games, as a real threat in the forwards. But again, the influence of Conor McGrath is a real worry for them, that if he doesn't pony up every day, Crack will look to be in a little bit of trouble. He, like the famous saying, again, not to be using cliches, he's the conductor of the orchestra. And once he was nullified and got injured in the county final, it was over for Cratloe.
Joe, where is your sporting highlight from 2019 lie?
Probably above in Cusick Park in Mullingar. I thought when the game was in the balance there, and a huge game for Clare, playing a team that had come up from Division 3 at home, to keep the season going from a Clare perspective, and the game in the balance, and young Stephen Ryan in goals, who probably had been maybe the third choice keeper at the start of the year, put the ball down on the 13 and kicked it out. Gary Brennan's fetch, I thought, was just, not only do it once, he did it twice in quick succession, and that secured Clare the victory, which brought us on, of course, to the last 12, and then it wasn't to be against Meath. But I think that alone, from an inter-county perspective, is worth noting. And from a club perspective, you would have to, obviously Milltown were favourites by a lot of people to win the championship, but special mention to Kilmahel and the Gales, given that we're in the Gales territory now, that their 21 success, and I think it raises the prospect of more and more amalgamations, and amalgamations becoming part and parcel, successful amalgamations becoming part and parcel of Clare football.
Yeah, press pause on that one, because we're coming back to that. But as you mentioned, Kilmahel, the Gales, we have to come back to, I suppose, I think it's pretty clear as to what Peter's going to pick as his highlight. I don't know, did you ever see young Cast out to grass? Full-time whistle goes in the park. This fella, I think, got the smell of the grass for the first time anyway, the way he leapt up and out. That's obviously your highlight, Peter.
Yeah, just I suppose the way they played in the final, but also in the semi-final, the three games we played, they played with real conviction and real unity, and played some good football as well, and they are able to play, and it's one thing being able to play, but the thing that you always want a team to do is express themselves, and they did that, and until we knew that this group had a lot of potential, but until you deliver on that potential, you always have something to prove, and right up until half time against Breckens, it was there to be won or there to be lost, and I
don't know how many sides win the 21A title missing their one of their mainstays, midfielders, in Dan Keaton, which was a huge loss to any side.
Yeah.
And, not only to go on the championship without him, but to win it was a marvellous feat.
Yeah, and he was right there with the group all along. He's still under 21 next year, so hopefully the championship next year will be under 21 again. But yeah, it just meant an awful lot to obviously to the players, but to their parents as well, and to the two clubs. On our own in Shannon Gales, we would have struggled to have had a 21 team. It definitely wouldn't have been 21A. I don't even know, would we have had a team, Kilmahel similarly, but they've been playing together. This group have been playing together since under 16, and they've always competed, but this was the first time they actually won an A championship, and but you'd have to give a lot of credit to Breckens too, because the year they've had and the way they've played, really, I suppose, again, they gave their young players an opportunity to go out and express themselves, and that's what you want to see, young players playing without fear, playing with a bit of abandon, not being afraid to take a chance,
Would it always be the aim for amalgamations to, when they get to senior, to try and always hold their own as their one club identity? I have this kind of opinion that you'd often lose your identity with amalgamations, definitely at under 21 level or at minor level. If your club can't field a team, I think there's a real purpose in amalgamations, number-wise, because of number-wise. But I think marrying up or going to bed with somebody for the sake of really having a very, very strong team and maybe losing your club identity, would you see that as a problem?
Yeah, and it's something that people are talking about around here. Some people would definitely be in favour of an amalgamation, Kilmahel, Shannon Gales, and some wouldn't. And I suppose, look, there's two sides to it. I mean, speaking for Shannon Gales, the club has been there since 1887. And it's a long time. It's a long history. There's been good years, there's been hard years, but it's always been there. And you definitely would have to think very, very long and hard. You'd have to, do serious research, I suppose, into numbers and into, thinking ahead 10, 15, 20 years to see, how would it work. Like, you'd have to put a massive work into it. You couldn't make an instant decision on something like that. Like,
amalgamations at the moment are still optional, but the day is fast coming, and in my opinion, where they're going to become a necessity because the numbers won't be there. So they're still optional at the moment, and clubs can amalgamate and play under their own banner at a lower level. But the day is very quickly coming for a number of clubs where that option won't be available.
Yeah, but then that's going to mean championship restructuring, and maybe it's a shift in the ideology of how amalgamations are looked at against the single club team as well. Because we saw this year controversy and debate about how the relegation thing was going to work and all that, and I know there's motions going to the January structures meeting in relation to that as well. Like, so, I mean, it's not just as simple as saying amalgamations have to be accommodated. Because there's changes needed to the teams that you're accommodating them against as well, I think.
But I don't understand why there should be.
Well, I mean, if you have a situation this year, which we had, where Kilrush beat the Naomh Eoin Ó Corrie's amalgamation, but yet in the overall standings finished below them.
Yeah, but that was clarified by rules, so there was no issue there.
But if there's going to be more and more of them, is it not going to have to take an overall look?
Well, I don't think the rule will change. And the rule was enforced this year. So none of us were familiar with the rule. So, but it's just an education thing for all of us to become more familiar with it. But I do think amalgamations are the way forward for the future. And this idea where 10 or 11 players is a big crowd at training. And some clubs might have 28, 29, 30 at training. But back in West Clare, and particularly in North Clare as well, if you have 11 at training, it's a big crowd. And some of those are travelling from Limerick and further afield to make that 11. So it's not a feasible project going forward. And even if clubs have to look at training together, it's certainly going to be better than, a number of years ago, Clare and Kilmel trialled it. Kilmel were intermediate at the time, Clare were senior, and they used to have 26, 28 lads training on a Wednesday night.
But is that rule fair, though, Joe? Whatever about the maths of it, the numbers of even training together, is that rule fair that Kilrush beat Naomh Eoin? Who were the amalgamation? Naomh Eoin who?
Ó Corrie's.
Ó Corrie's. And the amalgamation finished above them, even though they were beaten. Apart from the rule stating that, is it a fair rule?
I think it's a fair rule, because you see, you can't. Where do you relegate an amalgamation to? If they have two intermediate teams, where do they go? So it's not about it's not about relegation for them. It's about disbanding them. So the rule is, at the moment, you can't be relegated down a grade if you're an intermediate team. They can't play against each other themselves next year. So there's nowhere for them to go. But the two, I think, and I've said this before, that when an amalgamation applies, you ask, do you accept you're probably going to be asked to play 2 games in a weekend? And secondly, are you likely to be competitive? And if you can't answer yes to both of those, well, then there's no room for you. Because at the present time, with the way football and hurling is structured in Clare, you're going to have 2 games a weekend.
And I think that's the big problem. That is the big problem.
But there isn't a solution to it right now.
Well, unless a solution is found, it won't work. I just can't see it working. And even thinking locally here, like that, if you're as we are, Shannon Gale's an intermediate club, if you are amalgamated with someone, with another intermediate club or a junior club or whatever, and you are playing intermediate championship and senior on the same weekend, you're always going to give your time to your own,
and that's only right that it should be the first game. It's proper.
But
I mean, I don't understand why it can't work. And we've seen it down in Cork, we've seen it everywhere, and down in Kerry and Cork, everywhere like that. A county semi-final on a Sunday with 11 of the players playing, a county senior semi-final on a Sunday, 11 of those players or 12 of those players playing with their own club on the Saturday. So it's just a mindset, I think. And if you talk to the players involved, the players are willing to do it.
Yeah, it probably is, but I still can't see how you can give, full... preparing for a match like that, you can prepare for a senior championship match and you've an intermediate again the same weekend.
Well, they can do it in other counties, so it's definitely doable.
I don't know.
Right, looks like we're not getting consensus on that, so just while things are getting heated here, we'll cool it down for 1 sec. We're going to take a very quick break. Lowlights of the year to come, unfortunately we have to talk about that, and other milestone events as well, and that quiz to come. Don't go anywhere. Now you're welcome back to the second part of our end of year Champion Sports Chat podcast here in Murty Browne's bar in Tullycrine. Still joined by our panel here. They didn't fall out just before the break, but they made it up anyway. Joe, Garry, Fergie O'Loughlin and Peter O'Connell. We spoke before the break, lads, about highlights of the year. I guess maybe if you were to take the teacher's hat, Joe, we'll start with yourself. The maybe must-do-betters, or perhaps the parts of 2019 that we remember maybe for the wrong reasons, or for those lowlights, as we call them.
Well, lowlights, I think in terms of Clare football, obviously, retaining status in Division 2 was the objective, primary objective start of the year, and to have a good run in the championship. And I think both of those boxes were ticked. We had a very competitive senior and intermediate football championship, and obviously a Training 21 final. So there was a lot of positives from a Clare football perspective. On the negative side, I think maybe our county 20s, we've been disappointed with that. They went down, Waterford beat them below, and in Fairfield, and then took copped a fair hiding after that. So, well off the market on the 20 level, but under 20 isn't the same as 21 was, because obviously some of the players that you are expecting to play, if they've played for county team, then they're no longer available. So so that's certainly a low point, even though there are reasons for it. The other one I would have to say, and it came up at convention last week as well, is Carlohan. We still have players travelling from West Clare and North Clare, everywhere around Clare, to go to Limerick to train. And in this day and age, with all the money and the investment and the management and everything that has gone on, that's disappointing that is still the case.
Fergie, that's I don't want to call it a bone of contention, because it's gone far beyond that. And we heard at convention that experts have come in and said, look, this has been mismanaged for 4 years. We don't have anybody held to account for it. There was calls for Clare Abbey to be sold, which would have realised anything between €400,000 and €500,000. That would have put a fair finish on Carlow, and that was scuppered. I mean, how €23,000 Clare has spent on training outside teams or training at outside venues. Like, that figure's not sustainable. Like, when is this Carlow Bull going to be caught by the horns?
Yeah, the sooner, I suppose, the better. And it's a thing that we've been saying for quite a while, since Carlow opened its gates, that so many county teams had to beg, borrow and steal from clubs to get into their fields to train, and we've been one of those victims in Clarecastle. That we've only for the likes of Clarecastle and the likes of Mealy, I know have been very facilitating to the county board for teams coming in. When we have a centre of excellence, everything should be there. And I think the one thing that really I think that everybody kind of overlooked, in this day and age, you need an all-weather playing facility, don't you? It's throughout the country. Every county board or every club nearly now has a full elite AstroTurf playing area for all year round, and that should have been the first priority in Carlow. I still think, and we said in one of our podcasts, I am in all that has been spent on it. I still think it's not too late to recover it. I do think that there needs to be a real look at it, and somebody to grab the bull by the horns on this and say, it's my project. I'm going to be given 12 months to get this really going and start it and get it finished to a top class facility. And I suppose the other disappointing thing, I would say, the handling of Donald Maloney in the management of Donald has given savage service to Clare, both at minor 21s and at senior level, and I think the way he was treated was absolutely scandalous. There was an era of contention out there that change was needed, and I think Donald Maloney himself would probably first put up his hand if County Board have come and said, look at Donald, we're going down a different route in this. We thank you for your time and your efforts, Clare GA and Clare GA people, but we're moving on. But to bring him along for 3 or 4 months, knowing well that behind the scenes there was a major turn in this, I think was very unfair to the man. And I suppose the last thing was the Clare hurling team. I can't get out of my head the performance below the Gaelic Crowns against Limerick. It was just so poor. We were like an average intermediate junior team playing that day, and I think that was probably the down points of the year for me.
Peter, what about yourself?
Yeah, that game against Limerick, the game over in Cusack Park against Tip, you never expect to see a Clare hurling team going out getting hammered in championship at home in Cusack Park. That to me was a very low point. Equally low point was the way Donald Maloney was was treated. Personally, I thought at the end of the year, at the end of the championship, not at the end of the year, when the championship finished in June, as we know, I did think that it probably was time to change the management purely based on results. But Don Maloney deserved a lot more to be treated with respect. You know, he has given years to Clare, and look, we all know in sport and in GA in particular that you are held to account depending on how your team performs, and if it doesn't perform, you probably know yourself that it might be time for a change. But treat people with respect. You know, don't do what Clare GA did to Don Maloney. It just wasn't good enough. I'm delighted Brian Lohan has come in. I think he's the man. The likes of him is needed in several respects. You know, both in dealing with the county board, and maybe with adding a bit more of an edge to the Clare senior hurling team, because they need that.
Yeah, I'm just so glad that all of this stuff was addressed in such detail in the hurling review, that's all I'll say. And you'll have read about that in the paper as well. Right, let's move on before that discussion goes down another rabbit hole. And we're going to move on to what is... look at this. This is live now, okay? This is what a lot of you have been looking forward to, I know. So 3 sheets of paper, 3 biros, 3 experts, 10 questions. Okay? So first, lads, what I want you to do, Peter, you might turn into this corner here, because you need to be making sure that nobody...
What am I going to write on the wall?
Do you see that corner there? See the corner? See? I spotted it for you. Right? You can leave down the mics for this. You don't really need them. Fergie, you can turn into that corner there, and Joe, you can stay as you are. Just no cogging now. Right. So I need... That's okay. Look, this is live. These things happen live. Don't worry, Sean. The expensive microphone is okay. 10 questions, lads. And... trust me, the word expert has been thrown about loosely on this one now. So the first thing I need you to do is put your names at the top of the sheet, so we know that it's your own. And we might get Sean there behind the camera just to keep track of the scores as we go, because I was never great at numbers. Okay, so 10 questions and a tiebreaker if needed, fellas. We'll start off. Question number 1. St. Joseph's Milltown won the 2019 Clare Senior Football Championship title, as we know. However, how many titles do they now hold? So how many titles do St. Joseph's Milltown, the 2019 Clare Senior Football Champions, how many do they hold? You can just take a minute there if you need it. It's not like we're rushing for time or anything.
Do we answer the question?
Just outline that. We'll take all 10 questions together, get the 10 answers, then we'll run through them and see how we go. Is that okay? We'll tot it all up. So that's question number 1. Question number 2, Fergie. This year's Jubilee hurling team in Clare were Clarecastle. In what year did they last win the Canon Hamilton? So this year's Jubilee team were Clarecastle. So 25 from 2019 was? Joe? 1994. But what year did they last win the Canon Hamilton? That's question number 2. And by the way, I told the lads before that there's at least one question throughout the 10 that they'll have one right at least. Fergie, that was yours. Right? Question number 3. Question number 3. None of them are going to get this. The Irish Open came to Lahinch this year, but what was the winning score posted by champion John Ram? So what was the winning score posted by Irish Open champion John Ram at Lahinch this summer? I'll give you a clue, lads. It was something under par. He did go under par. This is serious. I didn't realise there was going to be this much concentration on it. Question 4, if you're ready. The new Clare hurling manager, Brian Lohan, won how many All-Stars during his playing days? So how many All-Stars did Brian Lohan win in his playing days? Fergie has that answer written already. He's confident. Can we move on to number 5?
We can, and we've already 2 hurling questions yet.
Right. Here's another one. Anthony Daly famously spoke about the missing person in 1995 when the curse of Biddy Early was lifted. What I want to know is, where in Clare is Biddy Early buried?
Buried?
Where in Clare is Biddy Early buried? In a grave somewhere, says Fergie. Well, we're in Dalo's Public, so we had to have... a parish, yes. I don't know, so just to clarify, not a specific graveyard. I want to know if it's Rahona or wherever. The parish. Okay. Moving on. Question number 6, Joe. Adopted son of Cora Clare, Jim Gavin stepped down as Dublin senior football manager this year. How many Leinster titles did he win during his time with the Dubs? As a manager. So how many Leinster titles did Jim Gavin win as Dublin football manager? They're really getting into this. They really are. Okay, 7, Peter, is especially for you. In what year were Shannon Gales last crowned Clare senior football champions? And if he doesn't get this right, the credibility is shot. Wearing a Shannon Gales top in a Shannon Gales bar in the Shannon Gales parish.
I remember a long time ago being asked a question in Scored and Oak, who refereed the 1988 county final. No, the year I was asked that was 1988. And it took me about an hour to remember it was John Curry. So
credibility on the line again here.
I think I have this one.
Okay, and while the lads actually are writing down their answers, folks, you can see those pictures here behind them. It could have been all taken by John Kelly. I know you'll all remember that famous one there on the top right-hand side with the young fella standing behind Davy Fitz and plenty more as well. So question number 8, lads. This year's Jubilee football team were Éire Óg, but who are next year's? So this year's Jubilee football team were Éire Óg, but who will it be next year? Another Anthony Daly related question, seeing as we're in Murty Browne's as well. Question number 9. How many Clare senior hurling titles, Fergie, did Anthony Daly win with Clarecastle as a player? By the way, all questions subject to Wikipedia, just to get that out there. So how many Clare senior hurling titles did Anthony Daly win with Clarecastle as a player? That's question number 9. And our final question, Joe Garry. Joe's going to get this one right, but I'm going to make him say the answer. How many points did Joe Garry score for Cura Clare in the 1997 Clare Senior Football Final? So how many points did Joe Garry score? Thank God there wasn't a mic on Fergie there. You almost forgot. So how many points did Joe Garry score for Cura Clare in the 1997 Clare Senior Football Final? Joe, if you wouldn't mind giving the bottom half of your page there to Sean just to keep the track of the scores, if that's all right. Don't tear off your answers now. We need them. And the pin as well. Okay, lads. We'll go through this, and what's written on the page needs to be the answer that you give. So let's leave it down. Leave down the answers there. Leave it down in front of you, Fergie, so there's no changing. Leave it down. Look at the crafty old magpie. Right. Question number 1 was how many Clare Senior Football Championship titles have St. Joseph's Milltown? Peter, your answer was?
14.
Fergie?
13.
Joe?
15.
Point for Joe Garry. 15 is the correct answer.
Same as Kilmurray.
This for now. This year's Jubilee hurling team in Clare were Clarecastle. In what year did Clarecastle last win the Canon Hamilton? Peter?
2005.
Fergie?
2005.
Joe?
97 or 9.
No, that's incorrect. 2005 is correct, so it's 1-1 across the board. 1-1-1 after the first 2 questions. Question number 3. The winning total posted by Irish Open champion John Ram at this year's event in Lahinch, Peter?
Not a clue, but I went for 15 under.
Fergie?
16 under.
7 under.
16 under, another point for Fergie. Well done. On the money. On the money. Question number 4 was how many All-Stars has Brian Lohan, Peter?
4.
3.
3.
4, another point for Peter. You should know that we've written it enough in the paper the last couple of weeks. Now, interesting one. Where in Clare, Peter, is Biddy Early buried?
Don't know. Well, it's not Fecal, obviously. Like Rowan.
Oh, why isn't it Fecal?
I said fecal.
I said Fecal.
2 points here. A point for Joe and a point for Fergie.
I thought it was a trick question.
Biddy Early is buried in Fecal.
I knew she was from Fecal, but the question in I thought, well, she's probably not buried there. But
There you are.
Are
Cut out.
you saying she had a boyfriend somewhere else?
Moving on. Who's in the other side of the grave? Should be the next question. All right, lads. How many Leinster titles did Jim Gavin win with the Dubs?
7.
9.
7.
Point for Peter. Point for Joe. How are we looking, Sean?
3. All of 3.
All of 3. Right.
Whoa.
Okay. And we're down to the last 4 questions. All right. Question 7. When were the Gaels last crowned football champions in Clare, Peter?
71.
Fergie?
I put 89.
Very optimistic of you.
71.
71 point for Joe,
The
point
year
for
I was
Peter.
born.
1971.
No, 71.
So we have 4-4-3 going into the last couple of questions. This year's Jubilee football team were Rogue. Who'll be next year, Peter?
Dunbeg.
Fergie?
Kilrush.
Doonbeg.
Doonbeg is correct.
We're supposed to get football questions.
Well, there was enough for hurling ones. So
I got it right.
you had your chances there. So 5-5-3. Fergie needs the next one or he's gone. How many Clare... Oh, and look at the one he has to get. How many Clare senior hurling titles, Peter, did Dalo win as a player with Clarecastle?
I went with 4.
4.
All wrong. 5 is the answer. Dalo, you can have a word with the lads the next time you meet him. So that's Fergie, I think, out of the
Have
rec.
you got the ears?
That's Fergie out of the rec. The Clarecastle man asks me have I the ears. No, I don't, Fergie. So Fergie's out of the race. So we're down to the last question.
This.
Question number 10.
Stuart's inquiry into that.
Question number 10, Peter. How many points did Joe Garry score for Corey Clare in the 97 final?
0.
0, Fergie?
0.
0.
Yeah, that's why it was asked to 0.
Jo- is correct.
And
Points
he
all
didn't
around
shoot
there.
either.
Points all around there. So we're level, Sean, are we? Level between Joe and Peter.
Yeah.
And interestingly, we have the tiebreaker, lads. Okay, so the question is, and I go to you first for the answer, Peter, that according to Wikipedia, so just don't blame me, how many times did Brian Lohan play senior hurling for Clare?
85.
Joe.
68.
Joe Garry is closer because it was 54. So that's it. Joe Garry crowned champion. That's sickening to
Again,
say, isn't it?
again.
Beating Peter and Fergie, coming in a distance.
Well, at least Fergie was third. In fairness.
A third out of 3. Well done.
Good
lads.
third. Good
Top
third.
3 finish, Fergie.
Apologies needed to Anthony Daly, but your own clubman got it wrong. But you'll have a word with him, no doubt about that. Joe, we'll finish up. We'll give you the honour of speaking first as champion. A prediction for 2020, a sporting prediction that can be pulled from anywhere. If we come back here again in 12 months' time, what will you have predicted?
A sporting prediction. That
Don't make it something obvious now, like this. Clare stay up in Division 2. We're going to do that anyway. But
yeah. Well,
something outrageous now is what we're looking for here.
Okay. You'll have to come back to you. I haven't given this any thought at all.
We do loads. We do hours of pre-production work on this, by the way. So this is all staged.
Okay. That Ireland will come back from the Olympics with 5 medals.
Of any colour at all, just 5
5
medals.
medals. The medals are very hard to come by, but they'll come back with 5.
Right, I like that. Okay, Fergie.
Galway will come back and win the senior hurling All-Ireland championship, and that football All-Ireland will go to Tyrone.
Wow, they're left field. I like that. So Galway in the hurling, Tyrone in the football. Right, Peter, top that.
It's been an interesting winter already in Mayo, but I think they might have a more interesting summer. I think they might win the All-Ireland.
Oh, for goodness sake.
Okay, that's really outlandish now, is it? To be honest.
That's what we're looking for.
Yeah, right. Okay, all right. Joe, predictions, I suppose, for Clare for 2020. What are we hoping? What will be a successful 2020 for Culture?
A successful 2020 will once again hinge on the league, I think, and given that the championship now has a link to the league, it's crucial that Clare stay in Division 2. Obviously, we'd love them to go up to Division 1, but with the hits we've taken now, with the number of players missing, it's going to be extra difficult. However, there's 4 home games, all imminently winnable. And I would give Clare a good shout in Division 2. I think the Munster final is well within reach, so I'm expecting a big year for Clare football. As well as that, I think our 20s are going to have a big say.
They've done a lot of work already under Michael Nealon, yeah, absolutely. Fergie, what should people expect, or can we expect success for Clare in 2020 under Brian? I mean, everyone knows that it's been a difficult and not an ideal start. So, I mean, does that translate into what will come down the road, do you think?
I don't think so, and I suppose we've touched on a little bit about the slow start and all that. There's no doubt, we all know, and more so the players and the management know, that there's a group of players there that's capable of getting very, very close to not winning All-Ireland. I think a real good year if we could bring a Munster title back, hurling title back to Clare. And I know it's kind of lost its kind of high standard Munster championship, but I think for this group, I think if they could really have a brilliant Munster championship, take a Munster title back and be in an All-Ireland semi-final, I think would be a fantastic year. And there's no doubt about it. The material is there. the bodies are there. I'm dying to see the real championship Lohan team coming out. I think over the next 2 or 3 years, we got rolled over handy at times in games that were a little bit tight and physical, and yet I think if we get a lot of the Brian Lohan era when he played hurling himself onto these players, I think we'll be very hard to beat. And
How big a prize, Fergie, is the Munster Hurling Trophy now?
I think
For the bigger for the teams they're serious about in All Ireland.
Yeah, I still think, Joe. I still think that it's a massive prize. I do, and I know it's been wrote off as kind of, I still think that to come home with a Munster Championship for us, I think would be a really a brilliant start for us. I still think there's a group of players there in the next 2 years to 3 years that could win in All Ireland. I think it might take Brian Lohan this year to get his hands around it, to get a grip to it, for the players to get to know really the change of what Brian Lohan will bring to the setup, and a Munster Championship with the bigger picture in mind going forward for the following year would be a massive step. I think so.
Peter, I've left this until last, and just kind of my own personal highlight of the year as well. And just for people watching, we haven't forgotten about it, because any time you bring back a Munster title, as you've mentioned, but this year, I suppose our big story was Scariff Ogonnelloe Camogie bringing back a Munster title, and it's been going to be an incredibly busy start to the new year with their All-Ireland semi-final against Clough-Neil. We've also got that Harty Cup quarter-final with Flannans and Tullis, so an awful lot of stuff happening early January, but it would be remiss of us not to talk about what Scariff Ogonnelloe did this year, not only winning their first ever Clare title, but going on then to win Munster. And that interesting stat that Pat Minogue told us, we're never led in any game from start to finish. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, I think it's been an extraordinary winter for Scariff Ogonnelloe. And what I really like about them is they've really united East Clare. The entire East Clare community have got right behind them. They've a lot of players in Killaloe as well. So even though they're Scariff Ogonnelloe, they're kind of Scariff Ogonnelloe Killaloe in that they have a good few players from there. And they've just the way they've played, like they've been through some really big battles, and it's fairly clear that they can play if they're allowed to play, but they can also battle because they haven't been always allowed to play, and they've found an answer. And I think it's a really good example of what sport can do for a community, and not just for one parish in this instance, for 2 or 3 parishes, So it's been remarkable, and it's they're going to spend their Christmas preparing for Clough-Neil, and whatever happens, I think they'll be ready. I also think as well, up the road from us here, the Kilmahill ladies, turned years of oppression on its head. They'd lost a good few finals to the Banner. The Banner had been completely dominant in terms of Clare ladies football. You've a lot of people in Clare who would be critical of the Banner, saying they've players from all over the place. Personally, I think they've had some of the best players ever to play ladies football in Clare. And I always felt it was up to some other club to somehow get to their level, instead of all of us hoping that they'd come down a peg or two. They've had absolutely fabulous players, and I've nothing but admiration for the Banner. But the way Kilmahill played in the county final this year, and the way they prepared for it, was outstanding, and it needed something like that to dethrone the Banner.
I just think when we mention ladies football, it would be remiss of us not to mention the untimely passing of Kieran Harvey, because taken far too young. And I know we look forward to the year, and I'm sure Kieran did with his family no more than anybody around the county who's lost, and every club will have lost Gaels throughout the year. So it's important that we remember everybody who has passed on from this time last year, and some of them sadly far too young, but hopefully the new year will bring new hope for everybody, and fond memories as well.
Yeah, I think a very apt way to finish up 2019 on that note, lads. And I suppose from the Clare Champions perspective as well, Peter, to maybe thank the people that have
grudgingly thank Garry for
helped us out during the year.
Grudgingly thank Garry. It's killing me to have to do that now. But and Fergie, I suppose, as well. He's fairly forthright with what he says, but he stands by it, Fergie, and it makes good all viewing. Don't always agree with him, but it's good to have informed opinion.
Isn't it important that when you do make a statement, that your name is to it, or your face is to it?
Listen,
I think that's one of the most important things.
I couldn't agree more.
And I think in all our kind of statements and all our opinions, I think there was nothing personal in it, was there, throughout the year? We're all Claremen. We all want Clare to do very, very well. And without opinions and without lads voicing those and putting a face or your name to it, I think the GA would be gone massively downhill.
Listen, that's it. And the way I think about it is, don't write or say something in public that you won't say to a person that you meet walking down the street. You know, don't just change your opinion for a bit of attention or a bit of notice, and definitely don't kind of sit behind some anonymous Twitter or Facebook account and give an opinion that your name isn't attached to. You know, it's the height of cowardice. If you believe in something, say it. And people mightn't like what you say, but at least you've put your name to it, like, and they know you said it, like, and it's a strongly held opinion. It mightn't always be right. I've often said things that have been complete rubbish altogether. But
absolute nonsense.
But I won't try and give it off as someone else's opinion.
But Peter, done 99% of the GA community, when you do have an opinion, and it mightn't be to their liking or to their favour, but they always respect it. That's what I find. And a lot of people have said a lot of things, concerning me in the GA circles, but I once their name is to it, I can actually defend it, and I can say, well, in a minute we could have a debate about that. But I'd respect that.
But
I'd respect that opinion.
And they could be right.
They could be, yeah.
There's often been stuff said about all of us, and people are sometimes right, and we can be wrong as well, and we have to be big enough to
accept
face up to
that.
that.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 points. One is that nobody's going to forget any of these four faces tonight for all the wrong reasons, possibly. And I think if you give it a few more hours here in the front bar at Murty's, you'll hear a fair few opinions thrown around as well. The last thing we have to do, lads, is thank Sean behind the camera and the sound as well, keeping us all ticking over here. We'll be back in early 2020 with the next adaptation of the Clare Champion Sports Chat podcast. Loads to look forward to. As we mentioned, in early January, we've got those Munster League games, Scarf won those All-Ireland semi-final, the Harty Cup quarter-final. Loads to look forward to. We'll talk to you. Everybody have a great Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you all in 2020.